G'day, listeners and members. Welcome to our preview of Caulfield, August 29th. Looks a pretty good day for the sort of class of horse and races. Obviously, in regards to the quality of betting propositions, it's slim at the moment. So we just really need to monitor what happens here with the rain. There's been a fair bit of rain about. Tracks in the slow range, and there's currently 125 starters for the meeting, 51 are first up. So that's sort of a fairly high percentage of almost 41%. So there's certainly a major transitional meeting that we're dealing with, and I've sort of learnt the hard way over the years. These types of meetings are better just to take a step back from. We're going to have plenty of opportunities to bet up over the next few months. So if we need to have a few quiet days here and there to preserve the bank, then that's what we'll do. At this stage, there looks a few good races tomorrow, but the majority do look quite difficult. However, that can change when the scratchings come out, and certainly if there's a bias or something that does appear, we can sort of give us a bit more of an idea about what will probably be happening. But at this stage, I'm not in a rush to start backing anything now. There's a bit more water to go under the bridge before we get to that stage. So just onto the first. Look, I've got Dainstrom rated on top. Look, resumes here at 1400. Trialled really well recently with the blinkers on. Blinkers go on here. There's no doubt this horse is going to run pretty well. I think it looks a nice race for it. Whether it can just see out the 1400 remains to be seen against some of these, but certainly it's going to be the one to catch. And if there's a little advantage to be leading and on the fence early on, then this horse certainly will expose that for sure. The little concern is the rider. He has to get it right out in front. So, certainly there's a lot to like about the horse, but there's a couple of little negatives too. Set Square resumes. It's the class runner. The recent trial was just fair on the heavy. I'm not sure if it likes the heavy or the wet, so that's a bit of an issue. The current $5, I wouldn't be rushing to sort of jump into that, as we could easily just put a couple of negatives on the horse and it'll be out to 16s or something. So we just really need to wait and see. And we've got Redder Sun, who won well and looks pretty talented. It was a good win at Sandown when it was 3 wide the trip, and there's other winning hopes. So such is the nature of the race. It's a little bit tricky, that one, and we'll just have to wait and see. On to race 2, and we've got 2 horses here at the top of the market coming off what was quite impressive wins at the midweeks at Sandown. Alaskan Rose was able to take advantage of quite a slow early tempo to the 400 and kick home well, and Sailing By was able to kick home hard off of more of a solid tempo and produce a pretty decent overall figure relative to the day. I sort of had it as the best performance on the clock. So I think it'll run pretty well. So sort of the others have had a run and they haven't really gone that well on sort of some of the stuff we're looking at. So I'll sort of be pretty confident that the winner will come from number 4 and 5. Now, how we play the race, I'm sort of not sure. I could easily have them a lot closer. There's sort of not a lot between it, and obviously, a Quinella could sort of come into play here too. So a bit of an exotic bet on the 4 and 5 that do on our figures look to be well ahead of the rest. So generally, not a bad play on the exotics under these circumstances. But we'll certainly just wait and let the market sort of guide us as to if we got some decent value for the overs on any of those, and we can back and save or have a Quinella. So we'll sort of see how we go there. On to race 3. Look, the the raw figures have got Cerberus here on top with Orient Line. The figures produced out of that 1,000-metre run at Flemington were quite solid and hold both the horses in pretty good stead here. Cerberus is a horse that really hits the line hard. Orient Line's a 3-year-old that resumed. He was well fancied to run well at Flemington and may have just looked to disappoint a little, but he's going to run pretty well. Real Time is a resumer. This horse is a real talent. He worked through the grades quite well last campaign and finished racing in some pretty good races. So Smurden does, he sort of fits the bill of a horse like the Bowler or Under the Louvre. So just one of these horses that works his way through the grades well, and before you know it, they're really competitive. So he's got a lot of class, this horse, I think, and he was going to run quite well. Lord Esprit goes well. Inspector's been running in better class races, but it's a pretty deep race, and as you can see on the rankings, there's hardly any correlation. There's holes in everything. So we'll just sort of wait here, and Cerberus, it's currently around $16. Whether or not the 1,200 on a soft track's going to suit him, I'm sort of not sure at this stage, but he's sort of a horse we could easily have around where the market is. I'm not sort of advocating going, and betting on anything early here. As I mentioned in the post above this recording where you accessed it, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, and these are just raw figures. So, well, not raw, but we've worked them a little bit, and we've sort of got a bit of a base, and we'll adjust from there. But certainly they're the horses that that look to be well in it. Onto the fourth race, and Mick Price has got the two here, Prince of Brooklyn and Ready for Victory. They both appear to be going quite well. Prince of Brooklyn isn't probably as exposed to the bigger races as Ready for Victory, but on the figures he really stacks up. He's got strong figures, and I definitely expect that he's going to run really well. So he really looks like, even though he's just coming through a couple of lesser quality runs, I think he's really going to stack up this horse. And Ready for Victory, we sort of know a bit about him, and just looking at the early markets, the money is coming for Prince of Brooklyn, which is interesting. So certainly he rates on top for us, and I could easily have him as low as 250. Depending on the way I want to balance the market. So, it's sort of not totally surprising to see the move for him. And then Stream Ahead down the bottom, it's got, it ran on well last start behind Petit Falou, and, that form sort of stood up, and I'd expect that this horse will be running well again. Whether it's got the class of the other two, I'm not sure at this stage, but certainly it's very speedy. And, if Petit Falou was in this race, it'd certainly be well in the market. So I really think that Stream Ahead can definitely run quite well. Whether, we're not sure at this stage whether, sort of barrier one's going to be an advantage or not at this stage of the day. So that's just one of the things we need to be patient with. And, if we miss a price here or there and can't bet, well, so be it. I'd sort of rather do that than go early on a horse that come race time can't win. Onto the fifth, and Rich Enough trialled really well recently. He's just watching that trial. He's a big bull. He's a very strong horse, and he got bowling along and he kicked away. Just a really strong win. They put up 230 early in the week. It was taken. He's drifting now, even though it's not on a lot of volume, but, be interesting to see what happens with him, with his price. Certainly Bounding's been a horse that's attracted early interest on the markets. He's sort of opened up around the $5 mark, and he's mid-4s to 5s, and she's been well backed into the 3s, so 390. Miss Promiscuity and Under the Louvre, there's sort of not a great deal between them. Obviously, Under the Louvre resumed last time at 1100, and that was in the Oakley Plate, Group 1 Oakley Plate. Whoops, I'll just remove that. And he, that's a pretty good run. So I really think under the Louvre is a very nice type of horse, and small field, 1100. Caulfield, hits the line really hard, this horse. Yeah, it's a pretty competitive race, so it'd be interesting to see what sort of move and pushes around for Rich Enough. He's a high cruising 3-year-old resuming, and we've sort of had a little bit of experience with horses like that. Helmet was one of them. He never sort of came back. Mano Anui was another one. He sort of never came back. So, there's sort of, I think he will come back, this horse, based off of his trial, but there's sort of enough evidence to suggest that, at this stage of their campaign, we sort of need to be diving into the $2. It's probably a better bet just to sit out and see how we go here. But it's certainly a competitive race. All bar 1 or 2 runners are first up, so we'll certainly monitor and keep an eye on things. On to the next race, and look, Charmed Harmony comes out on top here. He's been flying this campaign. The rain definitely suits his horse. He's got a lot of ability, and certainly it's his go, this range. So it's very hard to sort of see how this horse won't run quite well. He won well last start, went 21 days between runs, but it's worth noting that it was an absolute walk. They really didn't go hard at all, and despite the fact he increased his class figure, he went, his speed figure from the Flemington win on the 18th of July to the 8th of August, it dropped off, almost 10 lengths. So he's had a 10-length drop-off in overall speed. Such was the setup and nature of that race at Flemington on the 8th of August. Absolutely no tempo, and he's won comfortably, but ran 10 lengths slower than the start before. So, we'll need to monitor him. The little query here again is barrier 1 leading on the fence. Is that where they're going to want to be at this stage of the day? And Sadler's gone with the claim. He likes to do that. He likes to put the claims on. I think he does a bit of an old school form guy, but he gets it right a lot. But big race day here, and some nice horses resuming. Dylan Dunn has to get it absolutely inch perfect. So the jockey here is a query, and certainly if we work a bit more of that negative in with the jockey, he's sort of going to get out closer to where he is. I think $3 is a pretty reasonable price, but if we want to really get nitpicky about the horse, the barrier, the track at this stage of the day with the rain about, and the jockey are certainly concerns. And we've got a handful of other horses that are going quite well. I really would expect that Zabrins is probably a horse that we'll see really improve. I think this horse is in for a pretty good campaign. Whether or not he's going to really appreciate the wet track, he's sort of gone okay before on the soft, and he hasn't either. So sort of not exactly sure exactly where he sits on those types of conditions. Excuse me, but I thought his run was reasonable first up down the straight behind Shiraz, and I've got him pegged as a horse that will definitely be improving big time over 1400 to a mile on firmer ground. And the more pace, the better for this horse. He likes pace to run on. Look, we'll just monitor the rest. And onto the 7th. It looks a good race, this one. Look, the figures sort of come out on the top and bottom horse. The top one's Cosmic Endeavour. Obviously, look, it's a really quality mare. from the Waterhouse stable. I think that she's going to be able to work into a pretty good spot. She runs really well first up, and she's had a couple of trials. It's quite hard to not see her, being in the finish here, and there's a lot to like about her. So she's obviously got a win over Catkins over 1300 last prep, which is really solid. She clocked in at about 120 on speed, which is, a big it's a big figure for us on our speed, and she's, if we track back through her first up runs, she's obviously got some pretty big figures first up also. 104 on debut, 115 on a soft track over Diamond Oasis on the 1st of March 2014, and then was pretty good last prep first up also, I thought, went wide, and then 2 starts later had the good win over Catkins. So, he's obviously a lot of class here, and looks to offer a couple of trials, to be ready to go here. I think she's going to be really hard to beat. She maps up pretty well, as I said earlier. And we've got Veselay, who she resumed. Her run was pretty good. She had strong late sectionals, and her overall figure was fair. It wasn't through the roof. There's certainly, looking at her figures from last prep, she's got a bit of upside, certainly on the class side of things. But, she has to go to a new level here to beat a horse like Cosmic Endeavour. Granted, there's certainly a decent weight swing, but certainly, Cosmic Endeavour is well entitled to having the 59, and I think, with the class that she's shown over the years, she's well entitled to be carrying, the 59 against his field, especially with a win at weight for age against Catkins. So I think she'll go really well. I think they're the two. I think Cosmic Endeavour is the resumer with the big class that we can sort of rely on to map well, and certainly Veselay, she'll cross over from outside and be leading. So at this stage, they look the way to go, but I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, is on pace the place to be by this stage tomorrow with the track cutting out? I'm not sure. So it's sort of hard to say at this stage, but that's sort of the way we want to be looking at that stage. On to race 8. And look, this is another tough sort of race. The market at this stage is a little bit over the shop. We've got some emergencies in there. Look, it's probably not a great betting race. There's a lot of horses resuming here. There's a lot going on. If I had to pick one at this stage, it'd probably be Stratum Star. I think that he kicked down hard really well last start. He just got too far back from a bad gate. He's certainly going to be in a better position here, and he's sort of the 3-year-old, I think, that can take the next step this year and really match it with the older horses. And, a lot of these older horses, we sort of know a fair bit about them. Whether or not this is their grand final, I'm not sure. And he's had the run under his belt, Stratum Star. So, I don't want to spend too long on the race. I've got High World there. It's come out a big price, but that has to be a manual adjustment there, as you can see. It's number 3 on speed. So that's going to end up in the top of the market. So when there's a race with a lot of queries, I generally won't crunch it down too hard, on a Thursday or a Friday. I'll wait till the scratchings come out and finish it off then, because the reality is you really can't do much until you know who's in the field. And then on to the last. I'll just sort that from smallest to largest. And look, Iggy McCall, it's going to get back. It was a huge run last start. It ran its last 800 in phenomenal time. It has to back up now. We've learnt that when they run that quick, it can be flat. It has had a trial in between. Again, it's going to get back from barrier 11. May not be too far back, but it probably will be. So that's a little bit of a query. Excess Knowledge is going quite well. When I say that he's gone quite well in the past, I thought his run first up was fair. wasn't great. He produced a negative last 400 metre split, which sort of could be construed as a little bit disappointing, or that there's more improvement. But he certainly is a horse that at this stage looks a little bit too short. Extra Zero is going to get back, but he's sort of going well. Then we've got the fit horses. So, Digger Pony, On Pacalo. It's one of these races where it's a little bit hard to sort of get a good line at this stage. So, there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge too with this race here. And at this stage, it looks a pretty poor race to get involved in. But once the track bias and scratchings and all that sort of comes out, we'll have a bit more. So, look, that's it for us. There certainly looks to be a few races that are probably going to be worth betting in. If we sort of looking at spending 1.5 to 2.5 units per race over a few races, we're probably going to, only be risking around, less than 10 units on the day, probably around 6 or 7, and we'll give our chance an opportunity if we can get all the winners, to profit around 10, and if we can get one winner, we're sort of going to break even. So, that's not generally how I approach a day, but as I said earlier, such is the nature of tomorrow. I think that's a pretty good way to approach it. And that way, if we get clean bowled, we're not going to do too much damage. And we only need one collect to break even. And if we can sort of get them all, we're going to have a good day for a limited risk. So looks a good day for us to look at a lot of good horses that are resuming, as I said, but we'll just go easy on the betting. So thanks for listening. All the best. And if you've got any questions, please jump into the live chat and at any stage during today and pop your questions in there, and I'll be happy to answer them. So thanks again, and all the best.